On June the 13th of 2022, American tourists Eva Liu and Kelsey Chang, aged 21 and 22 respectively, were visiting Germany's Neuschwanstein Castle, a famous tourist attraction said to have served as the inspiration for Disney's Cinderella Castle. The duo, who were both recent graduates of the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign, were approached by a 30-year-old American man, Troy Bowling. He reportedly promised to take them off the regular hiking trail to one with a more romantic view of the castle. It was reported that Bowling and the young women stayed at the same hotel, the Cybele, in Munich, but hadn't met before. Upon reaching the viewpoint area, Bowling attacked Liu and tried to undress her, at which point Chang intervened. Bowling then choked the latter and threw her from the precipice into a 165-foot ravine. He continued assaulting Liu, strangled her until she was unconscious, and pushed her body down the slope as well. The woman fell close to Chang, and both of them were subsequently airlifted from the area by mountain rescue teams. Liu suffered critical injuries and died in a hospital overnight. Chang was also hurt, but she was described as responsive by the rescue teams. It would emerge that a branch had broken her fall, and she was released from the hospital within days. Bowling ran from the scene in the immediate aftermath, but was eventually arrested in the area. The handcuffed attacker was shown on video being escorted by the police, and witnesses reported that his face and neck were covered in deep red scratch marks, indicating that his victims had fought back. Bowling, a resident of Michigan, was charged with murder, attempted murder, and abuse. He faced additional charges after his laptop and cell phones were found to contain explicit material involving the abuse of minors. Number 7. Marek and Katarzyna Pietrzycka. Polish couple Marek and Katarzyna Pietrzycka were visiting the coastal city of Pattaya in East Thailand in the spring of 2015. As they were walking together, Marek was approached by transgender escort Plagad Somian, who insulted his wife, telling him to ditch her and make the switch. 42-year-old Katarzyna didn't take kindly to the comment and told the escort that her husband wasn't interested before grabbing his hand and walking away. In the moments that followed, Somian flew into a fit of rage, took off her stiletto, and struck Katarzyna in the face. The latter collapsed, at which point Somian hit her again before Marek intervened and pulled her off his wife. The police and emergency services were called, and 23-year-old Somian was arrested. Photos taken at the scene would show Katarzyna bleeding profusely with a bandage wrapped around her head. She was taken to Pattaya Memorial Hospital, where she received treatment for bruising and a cut to her head. Somian admitted that she'd attacked Katarzyna, claiming it had been an angry reaction to the woman insulting her. She was charged with causing bodily harm and held in detention while awaiting trial. The incident was described as a rare occurrence in a city which was known to be frequented by tourists looking for paid company, even though there were reported incidents of visitors being robbed or ripped off. A local man told the media that the escorts were normally very good to tourists, as that is their trade. Number 6. Alexandra Vedovic. Serbian tourist Alexandra Vedovic was visiting Times Square in New York City while on her first trip to the US in late February of 2013. The 34-year-old woman was posing for a photo while her friend Ivana Lisovac Bloom was behind the camera. Without warning or provocation, Vedovic was then rushed by Deanne Ostby, aged 30. The latter knocked the tourist to the ground, injuring her and scattering her personal belongings on the sidewalk. Photos taken at the scene in the aftermath would show Vedovic sitting on the pavement with blood in her blonde hair from a head wound, while her friend and an officer tended to her. As Ostby was being detained, she repeatedly yelled out, "Freedom of speech!" But it wasn't made immediately clear how her words were connected to her violent outburst. A photo would also show Ostby handcuffed and displaying a bemused expression on her face while wearing a hooded sweatshirt with the names of various NYC neighborhoods printed on it. Vedovic suffered substantial pain as a result of the assault and was treated at a local hospital, where her wound was mended with 3 stitches. Washington native Ostby offered no motive for pushing the Serbian tourist to the ground, but her records show that she'd been arrested for another assault in January of the previous year, which had taken place at a women's shelter in Maine. Number 5. Gemma Wilson. In the fall of 2017, British tourist Gemma Wilson was trekking the Annapurna circuit in Nepal alongside her teenage stepson. The pair stopped for refreshments at a local tea house, and 35-year-old Wilson bought some black tea. When she got up to pay, the holidaymaker was told that the tea was 150 rupees, or nearly $1.5. Wilson would later recount, while speaking to a media outlet, that she usually paid 50 rupees for the tea. She completed the purchase but told the store owner it was seriously pricey. Wilson and her son then stopped to take a photo of the sign outside, which enraged the owner. The woman ran towards Wilson and attempted to strike her with a wooden plank. The incident was captured on the body camera worn by the tourist. The enraged store owner then threw stones at the pair while chasing them down the mountain and was heard saying, "You English people are rich, why bargain?" Wilson pleaded with the woman to leave her and her son alone, afraid that fighting back in the treacherous terrain would have resulted in her falling and becoming seriously injured. The shop owner eventually retreated, and Wilson's stepson was unhurt, while she herself emerged from the incident with slight bruising. Number 4. Sandra. In the fall of 2022, a Spanish tourist, only named as Sandra in the media, was visiting the Taj Mahal when she was attacked by a troop of monkeys. Sandra was found crying in pain at around 7 a.m. near the main mausoleum by local photographer Yogesh Paras. Videos and photos which subsequently spread on social media showed the photographer and officials as they gave Sandra first aid. One of the rhesus macaques, which roam freely in great numbers in the area, had bitten the woman on her left calf. The monkey god Hanuman is revered in Hinduism, which was one of the reasons why some locals regularly fed the animals, leading to a population boom and their more daring behavior. Monkey attacks at the mausoleum had been a recurring problem, and just a month prior to the incident with Sandra, 2 tourists from Delhi had been bitten. Number 3. Sue Young. A New York City teenager was arrested in August of 2023 after she was caught on video attacking a 51-year-old woman in front of her husband and young daughters while on a southbound F train approaching West 4th Street. Sue Young and her family were visiting the city from Nevada when a trio of female teenagers seated across from them on the subway started pointing at them and laughing. Young was reported to have started laughing with them in an attempt to ease the tension, but the move only angered the teens. They began insulting and threatening Young and her family. As the situation escalated, bystander Joanna Lynn, aged 34, took out her phone and began recording. When one of the teens saw that they were being filmed, she charged Lynn and punched her in the face repeatedly. Another teen was standing over Young and the tourist pushed her away in an attempt to get to Lynn. At that point, the trio focused their attention on the older woman. Young later reported, "The girl in the white t-shirt came slugging at me. She grabbed my hair, I grabbed her hair, and I basically just grabbed onto her hair to shield my face because she was swinging." Young's glasses were smashed and her arm was bruised upon being caught between handrails during the onslaught. Other subway riders intervened and kept the teens away from Lynn and the Young family, who eventually got off at the next stop. In the aftermath, the girl in the white t-shirt, whose identity wasn't revealed due to her status as a minor, surrendered to the NYPD. She was charged with 2 counts of assault. Today's topic was requested by Merciless Gamer and Sean Delap 8587. If you have any other topics you'd like to learn about, subscribe and let us know in the comments section below. Number 2. Natalia. On the evening of June the 26th of 2021, a Russian tourist who only chose to be identified as Natalia and her friend were walking home from dinner on West 15th Street in Manhattan, New York City. A man was captured on CCTV grabbing Natalia's handbag and then pulling her into a scaffolding pole. He dragged her on the pavement for several feet when she refused to surrender the bag and punched Natalia's female friend in the face when she tried to help her. The unnamed robber released the bag and fled when another man walked up to the duo. The back of Natalia's head was completely bloodied and she required 10 stitches in the aftermath. Speaking to a CBS outlet, the woman stated, "I don't really consider myself a victim. I fought it as well as I could," before adding that her love for the city wasn't shaken by the incident. Our previous release about when tourists go wrong is lined up after number 1, so stick around if you'd like to watch that release as well still. Number 1. Dustin Wakefield. In the summer of 2021, Colorado man Dustin Wakefield was visiting Miami Beach with his family members, including his wife and baby boy. On an August evening, they were in the patio area of La Cerveceria restaurant when a man, subsequently identified as 22-year-old Tamarius Davis, walked up to Wakefield, pointed a gun at his child and said, "It's time to die." The father responded by shielding the baby with his body, at which point Davis shot him multiple times, including in the head. A bystander's video captured in the immediate aftermath would show Davis dancing over 21-year-old Wakefield's body while yelling, "I did it, I did it." One of Wakefield's family members would later tell a media outlet, "You can't wrap your head around this type of evil." Wakefield was pronounced dead in a local hospital. Hours after the shooting, Davis, who was himself a tourist visiting from Georgia, was tracked down and arrested in an alleyway. It would emerge that prior to gunning down the father of one, he'd also randomly shot at another man on Ocean Drive. Narrowly missing him, Davis was charged with second-degree murder and attempted murder. When he appeared in court on August the 25th, a state prosecutor stated that Davis was high on mushrooms and he just started shooting. He'd chosen Wakefield at random while reportedly feeling empowered by the drugs. Updates indicated that he'd pleaded not guilty and was awaiting trial. Number 10. Kayn Phillips. In March of 2021, a Virginia woman went viral on TikTok with a video of her unknowingly holding one of the deadliest creatures in the animal kingdom in the palm of her hand. 3 years earlier, while Kayn Phillips was visiting Bali, she saw a tiny blue-ringed octopus swimming near the shore and picked it up. She and a few of her friends passed the brightly colored golf ball-sized animal around before returning it to the water. None of them knew that it has enough venom to kill 26 adult humans within minutes. Bites usually go undetected until paralysis begins to set in from its highly potent neurotoxic venom, for which there's no antidote. That day, Phillips had played with it and a second blue-ringed octopus for roughly 20 minutes and had tried to feed them oranges. It was only after she'd uploaded the video to Instagram that Phillips understood the danger she'd averted. 3 hours later, she called her dad crying. Number 9. Conor Rasmussen. A Washington man was stabbed in the head in December of 2016 while he was visiting New York City. 23-year-old Conor Rasmussen had traveled to the metropolis in order to propose to his girlfriend. A few days after the proposal, Rasmussen was looking for a pizza place in Manhattan's Midtown district, accompanied by his girlfriend's brother and other friends. He was on the corner of Madison Avenue and East 46th Street when he was attacked. At first, Rasmussen didn't understand what had happened, but then felt the knife's handle sticking out of the back of his head. He pulled it out and then kept pressure on the wound as blood began pouring out. Amazingly, Rasmussen survived and only needed stitches to mend a 2-inch gash in his head. Had it been an inch in either direction, the stab would have been fatal. After removing the knife from his skull, he handed it over to the police, who took DNA samples and checked it for fingerprints. Along with surveillance footage, the evidence led them to 20-year-old Brooklyn resident Stephen Klapanko. He was charged with attempted murder and possession of a weapon. Number 8. Rohina Bandari. In 2017, American tourist Rohina Bandari bled to death following a shark attack at a Costa Rican diving spot. The 49-year-old woman was part of a guided group diving near Cocos Island, a national park that has no permanent inhabitants aside from rangers and wildlife researchers. The surrounding waters are a sought-after spot for divers due to the presence of large marine species like rays, dolphins, and sharks. The guide, a 26-year-old Costa Rican male, saw a tiger shark approaching underwater and tried to scare it away from the group. However, as they surfaced, the predator tore into Bandari's legs, inflicting fatal injuries. The guide was also hurt in his lower body but was stabilized after being rushed to a local hospital. Bandari worked as a private equity director in New York City, and her passing shocked the Wall Street community. In the aftermath, her fiancé was critical of the diving tour's organizers for not providing guides with something they could use to defend themselves and those accompanying them. Number 7. Glass Bridge Shatters. In May of 2021, an unnamed tourist in China was left dangling in the air following the collapse of a glass bridge panel. The man was visiting a scenic area of Longjing City in the country's northeast. China is home to thousands of glass bridges and walkways designed to attract thrill seekers from abroad, but also to capitalize on its booming domestic tourism. As the man was crossing the bridge, the glass below him was torn apart by powerful winds, reported at up to 90 miles per hour. He managed to grab a supporting structure and was left dangling roughly 330 feet above ground. To put that height into perspective, it's about as tall as the Big Ben clock tower. Firefighters were called to the scene, but fortunately, he was able to get back to safety with the help of on-site staff. The man was taken to a local hospital for counseling and observation. He was pronounced as being in stable condition in spite of having experienced one of the worst-case scenarios involving glass bridges. Number 6. Gareth Crow. In February of 2016, a Scottish tourist was killed during an elephant trek on Koh Samui Island in Thailand. 36-year-old Gareth Crow was on the back of an elephant named Golf with his stepdaughter, 16-year-old Eiley Hughes. According to witnesses, Mahout Solwin Tun had had trouble controlling Golf and had struck the animal in the head with an iron spike. Golf became enraged after the handler climbed down to take pictures of the tourist. It charged Wintun, injuring him, and then threw the tourist to the ground. Within moments, it proceeded to trample Crow and stab him with its tusks. He died at the scene, while Hughes was taken to the hospital with injuries that weren't critical. In the aftermath, Wintun was arrested and charged for failing to control the elephant. The man defended himself by saying that Crow had aggravated Golf by offering and then withdrawing bananas, something which Hughes denied had happened. The incident reignited debates regarding the safety of elephant tourism, both for customers but also for the animals involved, which are often mistreated. Number 5. Mustafa Abu T. In 2019, a 22-year-old man identified as Mustafa Abu T attacked a group of tourists at the Jarash archaeological site in Jordan. Armed with a knife, Abu T frantically charged the group, slashing and stabbing them. Of the tourists who'd been injured, 3 hailed from Mexico and a 4th was visiting from Switzerland. The Jordanian nationals that counted themselves among Abu T victims were a tourist guide, a bus driver, and 2 security officers who were stabbed while attempting to restrain him. All 8 of the victims survived without life-threatening injuries, but a few did require hospitalization. According to local authorities, Abu T lived in a poor Palestinian refugee camp and wasn't associated with any armed groups. In early 2021, he was sentenced to death by hanging. Number 4. Patrick Braxton Andrew. In 2018, a North Carolina Spanish teacher disappeared in Mexico while he was hiking in Chihuahua's Copper Canyon region. The incident occurred in late October, 2 days after he'd arrived in the village of Urique. Patrick Braxton Andrew's family reported a 34-year-old missing when he didn't show up in Mexico City to meet his younger brother. His lifeless body was found on November the 17th, dumped on the side of the road. Braxton Andrew had sustained a fatal gunshot wound to the head. The police deduced that he'd been killed and buried elsewhere, but that the body was moved after numerous officers and volunteers had started searching the area. According to local authorities, Braxton Andrew had encountered members of the Sinaloa cartel drug trafficking cell, who possibly mistook him for a DEA agent. The cell is believed to be run by Jose Noriel Portillo Gil, also known as El Chuco or the Crooked One. It's unclear if Portillo Gil had been the actual triggerman, but the police launched a manhunt, with the governor of the Chihuahua state vowing to bring him to justice. Number 3. Liga Scramain. 33-year-old Liga Scramain was a Latvian-born Dublin resident who, in 2018, was brutally murdered during a trip to India. She'd arrived in Kerala in February, accompanied by her sister. They were looking to spend some time at one of the region's popular Ayurvedic wellness retreats. Scramain had reportedly been struggling with depression and thought the trip would prove beneficial. Within weeks of arriving to the country, however, she disappeared. It's believed that Scramain was snatched from a local beach by 2 or more assailants. She was assaulted and then killed. The police found her decomposing body hanging upside down from a tree in a Thiruvallam mangrove forest. Scramain had also been beheaded. 6 suspects were initially arrested in connection to the murder in the first week of May. The authorities narrowed the investigation down to 2 men. They were identified as Udayan and Umesh, local drug peddlers, each with a history of assault. However, according to subsequent updates on the case, they'd been released on bail, pending a trial. Scramain's partner arrived in Kerala to face them, but was shocked to find the men weren't in custody. He has been critical of the local legal system for allowing 2 suspects, previously convicted of assault, to walk the streets. Number 2. Gloria Miller. In 2018, an American tourist was stung to death by wasps at the Bwindi Impenetrable National Park in Uganda. 65-year-old Gloria Miller and her husband Gary were on a trip of a lifetime, as part of a bucket list wish to visit all 7 continents. Africa was the 6th. The couple was on a guided trek tracking gorillas through hilly terrain. Gary believed that one of the apes had brought down a wasp nest, or broken a tree on which the nest had rested. Within moments, the group was swarmed by hundreds of wasps. Gloria, who was at the front taking pictures, was the first to get stung. Several others, including Gary, were also attacked, with at least 4 requiring hospitalization. Gloria went into anaphylactic shock, and even though the guide used an EpiPen on her, she died at the scene. Number 1. Wakari eruption. On December the 9th of 2019, a stratovolcano erupted on New Zealand's Wakari Island as it was being visited by 47 people. A release of steam and volcanic gases caused an explosion which sent rock and ash flying into the air, with the plume rising 12,000 feet. Most tourists had been wearing shorts and t-shirts for the day, which offered little protection against the hellish landscape. Consequently, the scorching heat ravaged their bodies. 22 people, including American, Australian, and German nationals, suffered fatal burns. Some perished on the island. A few were declared missing and presumed dead, while others succumbed to their injuries in hospitals. The vast majority of survivors were seriously or critically injured. Boats and helicopters were dispatched to Wakari in a perilous rescue and retrieval effort. The bodies of those who died on the island had been damaged so severely that identification required forensic dentists, a fingerprint officer, a pathologist, and extensive profiling. In the aftermath, WorkSafe New Zealand charged multiple tour operators, government, and scientific agencies for failing to ensure the safety of visitors and workers that travel to the island. There were also a number of civil lawsuits initiated by the victims' families. Thanks for watching. Would you rather go on a trip around the world or spend a week at the International Space Station? Let us know in the comments section below.